It was an exciting start to the events of the NFL Scouting Combine, but we're just getting started there. But still, everyone is talking about the quarterbacks, the fast wide receivers, and especially hand sizes. I know you're probably tired of hearing about it, but I'm a guy who's covered Kenny Pickett at the University of Pittsburgh and what he did over the years to become the guy that's now being talked about as maybe QB1 of this NFL draft class. I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Here on the Friday edition of Locked On NFL, it's going to be me and your boy Q of Locked On Raiders breaking down what we saw in the first day of the combine and how we see things playing out the rest of the way, as well as some other updates around the league. Let's get into the Locked On NFL podcast.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On NFL podcast. It's the Friday edition. I'm Chris Carter. He's your boy Q. We're holding it down for you on a Friday. Remember, you can download this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, or YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button to the Locked On NFL channel to get all of our content. You don't just get the episodes of this specific podcast. You also get all the clips, all the expert analysis that we give right here on the channel, exclusively on our YouTube channel. So do subscribe there. Q, my man, it's been a week, and it's been an exciting week. How you doing?
Man, I'm blessed, man. And the thing about it is the NFL never sleeps, right? We say it's the offseason. Really, there's no offseason. I think that there's probably about a 2 to 3 day, maybe even a week at the most window in the year where it's like, okay, there's not really any NFL news. Besides that, there's always something going on in the NFL, of course, this week, highlighted by the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. So plenty to talk about, storylines of guys that are in the league and guys that are trying to get to the league. So a lot to get to on today's show.
Absolutely. And Q, there's a lot to talk about. Before we get to the combine, got to talk briefly about the NFL basically doing away with their COVID-19 protocols. Yeah. This means that basically all the testing, all the extra stuff they've done, all the restrictions they have, all that's going away next season. Or basically, right now with the off season, right, none of that's going to be happening. If guys end up getting sick, and that's one thing. We'll see how the rest of COVID plays out. Maybe another strain comes. Hopefully not. Please, I can't take it anymore. But we'll see how that plays out. But Q, people are saying we're back to normal. I'm just still skeptical because I thought we were going to be back to normal like 3 or 4 times by now.
Right. I mean, I think we all did. But look, I mean, this is about as close to normal as possible. It's great to hear that all the protocols are suspended. It's great to hear that guys don't have to worry about wearing tracking devices and social distancing at the facility. And I'm assuming that means that media is not going to have to go in and test once a week. I'm assuming that means we're not going to have to wear, tracking devices either. And we're going to be able to get back to, again, kind of a sense of normalcy. And my hope, and I know that it's not defined yet, but my hope is that means that at some point we're going to get back into the locker rooms where we really can get you the good coverage. We really can develop those good relationships that we did before all this COVID-19 thing happened. So fingers crossed we get back to that. I know it's not guaranteed, but man, I do feel good that at least they're suspending all the protocols and they did it effective immediately.
No, yeah, they did that. Now, Q, I hear you. I hope that that's the case with the locker rooms. I want to get back in. I miss that, but I'm not so sure that happens right away because the NFL, they want to control their narratives. They want to control how things get perceived, and they know that when people are in the locker room, that's when some of the crazy stuff can start to happen. And I feel like they might be sitting here saying, "Hey, like we control when people talk. Well, we know what's being said because everything's over Zoom and all this other stuff." I'm concerned that the NFL is going to try to do the stupid thing and try to limit that part by not letting people back in the locker room all the time. I think I think it would be a major mistake, but right. I just knowing the NFL, I could see that happening.
I mean, it could, but I mean, again, it's a step in the right direction the way it's going right now, suspending the protocols. So I like that. Now, hey, we're talking about getting in the locker room. There's other guys that want to get into the locker room, like Kenny Pickett, a guy that you covered like a glove there at Pitt. And I say a glove, and I kind of laugh because I wasn't really trying to. I wasn't really trying to make a pun, but apparently his hand size is the biggest topic in the NFL right now. You know him, you covered him. thoughts on Kenny Pickett and his hand size?
So, of course, if you've been paying any attention to the NFL draft, you know his hand size was 8.5 inches. That's the smallest hand size. There's no one in the NFL right now that has the hand size. The only successful quarterback with that hand size in recent NFL times was Michael Vick, and everyone's made a big deal about that. I don't think it's that. I don't think the hand size is what needs to concern you about Kenny Pickett, because a lot of people are saying, "Oh, he can't control the ball." And I'm like, "Well, he threw for 42 touchdowns last year. He was controlling the ball pretty well.
Pretty good control.
Accuracy is pretty good on his part.
Yeah.
He runs a lot. He uses his legs a lot. And some people say, "Oh, well, he'll be a fumble catch. He'll be a fumble problem." Well, a friend of mine, Chris Peak, who does great work for rivals.com. He's at Panther Lair. Check him out and all his work that he does, covering Pitt, just like I cover Pitt. But he pointed out this on Twitter. He said he went back over the last 2 seasons. Kenny Pickett has had 15 fumbles, and that's a good that's a significant number.
Yeah.
But you know who else has had around that number? Sam Howell has had 14. He's the UNC guy, bigger hands. Matt Corral, 14 fumbles, bigger hand size. Malik Willis, 20 fumbles, bigger
Woo!
hand
Right.
size. And these are all, again, two seasons. Is what you're talking about, is it worth the one extra
Right.
fumble compared to those two guys that have 14? And it obviously didn't help Malik Willis to have bigger hands. I think that's being overstated. Where I do think Kenny Pickett brings you serious limitations. If you go back to those combine drills and you watch some of those deep balls he was throwing on the go routes, they didn't have the juice on him. And I've said this about Kenny, and again, I'm a proponent of Kenny Pickett. I think if you get him in the first round and you put him in the right offense, he will be an asset to you, and he can help you win football games and even be part of a Super Bowl championship team someday. But his biggest limitation is if you get him and you think, oh, he's going to air it out and drop bombs deep down the field, he's a guy that he does not have the arm strength to throw ropes 40, 50 yards down the field. When he starts getting down there, the ball hangs a bit. And you saw some of those where the receivers had to slow up under it. That
Yeah.
happened a lot at Pitt with Jordan Addison, Jared Wayne.
That'll get picked off.
And in college, it works fine when you get one,
Right.
because he's very smart. That's what I'll say.
Right.
He's the smartest of these quarterbacks. He reads the field, and that's why he's avoided so many mistakes in college. But in the pros, you're not going to get those passing windows are not going to be that open. He will get picked off, and that's something that I think a team has to take note of. Is like we have to keep him in the 20 to 25 yard range of where we're throwing most of the time, unless we get those one-on-ones where it's like, hey, just put it up. That guy's going to go get it.
Right, exactly. It's interesting, man. And again, I think that the hand sign is being overblown. I really do. I think sometimes a lot of these drills at the combine, I know we're going to talk about speed in segment number 2. I think a lot of these drills get overdone, and sometimes a really talented player drops because they didn't do so well in the drills, like Orlando Brown when he was at Oklahoma. The offensive lineman drops to the 3rd round because he didn't block very well at the combine, or he didn't go through the drills. He didn't bench enough. And that dude, I mean, you had to run a country mile to get around that dude. He was a hell of an offensive lineman, and the Ravens picked him up, and now Kansas City has him, and he's going to make a boatload of money because he's, well, a damn good offensive lineman. So I think sometimes some of these drills are overdone. I think Kenny Pickett, if as long as, like you said, the issues that he has with the deep ball, the arm strength, if you can overcome that, I think that'll be the bigger issue than the hand size. So I just think that they're making a whole lot to do out of something that's, I think, minor. I don't want to say it's nothing, but I think it's minor. So I'm not going to hold it against him about his hand size, but that deep ball accuracy and some other intangibles that he might not have or has to really develop, that's what I'd really be concerned with.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, and I'll tell you again, as a guy who covered Kenny Pickett, if you want a leader, you got that tenfold with Kenny Pickett.
Right.
When they lost to Western Michigan early in the season, he called a meeting. Like, it was like, remember the Titans, where he was like, "We ain't doing this again, boys." And that was the rally. And like all season long, we would ask guys like, "Hey, what do you guys focus on this week?" It's like, "Well, man, we remember what Kenny told us back in like week 2, and we let that happen again." And that led to Pitt winning their first ever ACC championship. That's the kind of leader that he is, on top of being a warrior who takes big hits and gets up and fires up his team and does it in a classy way. And a person who, I'm telling you, after like we would get done talking to him on a podium after a huge win or a big loss, he would walk right off the podium. There'd always be a kid that would be like Make-A-Wish, special needs, someone there who Pitt is bringing there to give them a special day and a special experience. He would walk right up to that kid and say, "Hey, kid, I don't care about these guys. Why didn't you ask me a question? And he would find a way to connect to these kids no matter who they were, and you'd see the smile on their faces. That's who this guy is. He's an awesome person, an awesome leader, and he's a very smart quarterback. He reads defenses. He's accurate when he's throwing within his range. That's what makes him QB1 in my opinion, because none of these quarterbacks, and we could talk about Malik Willis, Carson Strong, whoever, everybody's got a weakness. There's no quarterback that you're saying, well, he has the deep ball and he has the athleticism and he has the size and he has the smarts and the college experience that we all want. There's no quarterback that has that in this class.
So let me ask you this as we wrap this up. Kenny Pickett's on the board at number 20. Do the Pittsburgh Steelers take him?
If there's not a superstar like Devin Lloyd or one of those guys in another position, yes, they will. I do think that they like him that much, because here's the thing is that the Steelers, they recognize this ain't like the year for quarterback, but they want a quarterback. They don't want to go into they need one, but they're also in a position where they know they know next year is a big year for quarterback potentially, and they know that if they can get things solidified this year, if they fix the offensive line, if they replenish the defense, and they just survive at quarterback this year, they can make next year a big year by saying, hey, we're fine at most positions, we're trading up and we're going and getting our quarterback that we really want. But if a Malik Willis or a Kenny Pickett falls to 20, and Tyler Linderbaum's off the board, Devin Lloyd's off the board, all the top corners are off the board, that I think they would be like, you know what? We like this guy. Let's bring him in and let's just build around him and make it something nice. So I do think that he would be in that conversation.
All right, there it is, right there. Book it. All right, write it down. Put it on in pen. Put it in permanent marker. Chris Carter said Kenny Pickett to the Steelers. It's done. No,
I put lots of contingencies in there.
I know, but I just act like I ignored all those because that's what I do. It's Friday. Why not? We're heading to the weekend. So.
Listen. That's my light skinnedness for not putting it down. I was just like, hey, I'm gonna put all these other things in there. If this happens, and if this happens, then I can totally see this happening. But I do know from all sources, all people that are close to the situation, the Steelers really like Malik Willis. They really like him. So, but I also think both of those guys could be gone by the Steelers pick, because I think there's going to be some desperate teams reaching at quarterback this year. But wide receiver was the position group that blew up in the combine Thursday. I mean, it was explosive. We're going to talk about the results there in just a minute here. But first, let's talk about one of our great sponsors, BetOnline.net. Football season may be over, but basketball season is full steam ahead with both pro and college hoops well underway. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net has your best source for hockey, boxing, UFC odds, and you can even bet on the NFL scouting combine itself. If you're watching or listening to this show right now, I can tell you that you had an opportunity to make money, because I said this all week long on the Locked On Steelers podcast. The number on BetOnline.net was the fastest time wouldn't be better than 4.29 seconds on the 40-yard dash on the first day. That was knocked down by Taekwon Thornton, and that's already gone. So if you put money down on that, you've already made money on BetOnline.net. Don't miss out on the rest of the combine. See what other props and odds they have on the NFL scouting combine that you can make money on by going to BetOnline.net. You can head to their website today or their mobile device to learn more about all the trends and all the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. We're here on the Friday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Chris Carter and your boy Q, keeping it rolling here. Q, them boys was fast out there. I was like, whoa, they was just flying. I'm like, yo, he was fast and he was fast.
Yes.
It was a ridiculous day watching wide receivers.
Dog, let me tell you like this. 14 wide receivers ran under a 4.43 or under. 14. That's flying. Now, there were some numbers that were extreme and crazy, and we thought that records were going to be broken, and then we found out that they weren't. But, man, those cats, and that's what I'm really confused about, man. You got a guy like Taekwon Thornton from Baylor, wide receiver. At first it said 4.21. He doesn't run a 4.21. Officially, it comes out to 4.28. Okay, that seems like a lot, but okay, fine. I can somewhat deal with that, okay? I can almost say, like, all right, well, it's not a record, but okay, 4.21, 4.28, fine. But then you have a guy like Chris Olave, the wide receiver from Ohio State, who originally ran a 4.26.
Yeah,
who
there was
really
that.
got everything going.
Yeah, that was when everyone was like, "Oh my good!" Like even I was like, "Oh, I knew he was fast,
Right.
but 4.26? What?"
I mean, it's so funny because like when these guys are running and all their speed, everybody was tagging me saying, "Oh, Q, that's the next Raider wide receiver. That's the next Raider wide receiver." And that's
Every
I
time.
was like, "You can't have 14 of them. There's not 14 guys. Like, what are you talking about?" But they kept tagging me on Twitter. Here's your next Raider wide receiver. But Chris Olave, 4.26, and then officially comes out of 4.39.
Yeah, they added on point. The 13 added
How
to
did
his
that
time.
happen?
I like that's some like. There's always buffer. Like we're not. Q
Somebody
and I
stopped
aren't
at 35. And,
right.
instead of a 40-yard dash, it was a 35-yard dash.
I don't know how that happened. And I get it. These things are tough to grade, and there's always official things. And there's multiple guys clocking it, and they got to like balance it out into who was the official time. But it was a bit much
That's a
this year.
lot,
There's
dog.
there's a,
That's
there's there's
a lot.
always buffer. There's always
Right,
mistakes when that happens. But like it's usually 0.05,
right.
0.08,
A
and
couple
like
points here, a couple points there.
right, but not like
Point
more
13?
0.13. That's more than a tenth of a second. And I know
Right.
that sounds ridiculous. If you're listening to this in your car and you're like, really, are they making a big deal about more than just a little more than a tenth of a second? But that stuff it really
Yeah,
impacts
it's a
when
big
you look at
deal.
especially the wide receiver position.
Yep.
At quarterback and linebacker, those aren't as nearly as big a deal. But a wide receiver, they're trying to see who flies. But there
That
are a lot
could
of
be a difference in $1 million.
it really can be.
You know
It
what
can make
I'm
it
saying? Like,
it can make you a first round pick or a second or
yes.
third or fourth round pick.
Exactly. Like Taekwon Thornton, for example. I mean, from Baylor, he's a really good wide receiver, had a hell of a senior year. I thought he was going to be a third day guy, straight up.
Mhm.
Then when I saw he ran a 4.21, I was
I was
like,
like,
whoa,
well,
he might just end up in the first day. And that's a
mhm.
big difference between the third round and or the fourth round and the first round or the early second round. That's a lot of money. And
It's a lot
so
of
I
money.
just don't understand how it was that big of a difference. Like I said, like you said, the buffer, I get. That's not a buffer, man. That's a lot.
That's a lot. But there's other guys who I did think might have put themselves up from day 2 or day 3 into day 1. The main one was Christian Watson.
Yep.
That guy, holy
Yep.
smokes. I mean, that guy's he's 6'4". You already like the build of him. But
Yeah.
then he comes out and runs a 4.36 and an official 4.36,
Right.
not an unofficial.
Yeah.
He runs a
Not a fake one.
4.36. I think he had 136 inches on his broad jump. When I looked it up and I compared it, according to stathead.com, that is the 5th best broad jump in the history of the event when it comes to wide receivers. That may need to be adjusted. Stathead can sometimes miss something, but I went back through their combine numbers and I was comparing it, and I was like, wow, that's tied for 5th all time at the wide receiver position. If you're thinking broad jump, it's all about height. No, broad jump is explosiveness.
Right.
That often shows who's going to get out there breaks the fastest, who's going to beat the jam the best. He did that. He had a great vertical leap. He made a really good case for himself. We talked about Olave. Garrett Wilson, I thought had a great showing because he was even faster than Olave with a
That's his
4.38.
teammate, his college teammate, and he did better than Olave.
That shows you what CJ Stroud was working with over at Ohio State this
Right.
year. Both
Right.
of them dudes was monsters.
Facts.
But
Facts.
but
Yeah.
then
I mean, it's crazy, man. Just looking at some of these speeds and looking at
mhm,
these guys, a lot of them put themselves in really good position. Now, of course, you can't just judge it. We talked about in the first segment about hand sizes and some of the drills being silly or whatever. Like,
speed
you
is only
can't
one
just
factor.
base it. Yeah, you can't base it solely on speed, but
Mhm.
it helps. That 40-yard dash helps. Obviously, the drills help. Ultimately, you go back and look at the tape. Look at the tape.
Absolutely. Because straight line speed ain't football speed. Because
No.
if you can run in a straight line faster than everybody, that's great. But if you can't run and dodge people and do it situationally behind your blockers at the right time, it don't matter how fast you can run. This ain't a track race. This is
Right.
football. But
Right.
but there are some football players out there who looked good on tape and then were faster than we thought they were. Alec Pierce might have been the biggest riser, the Cincinnati wide receiver.
Yeah.
He's another big boy. He's like 6'3". Man ran a 4.41, and he had the highest vertical leap. He's a guy that maybe looking at maybe not day 1, but maybe early day 2. He's
Right.
gonna get a look. Another guy that pushed himself up, Skye Moore.
Yeah.
He's a Western Michigan guy. He ran a 4.41 as well. He's the guy that I'm telling you, Q, people were hoping that like he didn't run here in Pittsburgh or he did because he's
Right.
from Pittsburgh. He
Yeah.
went to Shady Side Academy, which was where Mike Tomlin's sons played. He caught passes from Mike Tomlin's sons in high school football. And so everyone in Pittsburgh is like, if he just falls to the third round, we're just gonna bring him back home and it's gonna be great. Now
Right.
he ain't lasting in no third round. He's
No,
gonna be going
no.
to the second.
Yeah, no, and he's got some good traits, man. He's a damn good wide receiver, of course,
Mhm.
there at Western Michigan. But man, he's a hell of a wide receiver. He's not the biggest dude, but man, he got hand. You want to talk about hand size? He's got some hands. He was like 10 and a quarter, man. He was, I
Mhm.
mean, man, Kenny Pickett needs to be like, hey, dude, let me borrow your hands to get measured real quick, and I'll give them back. But no, I like a lot that has to do with Skye Moore. I think that he's going to be coveted by a lot of teams, so that's definitely a guy to be on the lookout for.
Sure. I mean, and the thing is that we're talking about all these guys. We're still passing up on like the Traylon Burks
Yeah,
or Jahan Dotson, who I thought had a really good showing, 4.43. He had a 4.43, and we're like, like compared to the rest of these
yeah,
guys, like
it
what are
went
we doing here?
bad.
Like, it wasn't bad. And Jahan Dotson, a guy I'm telling you, as a guy he went to Penn State. And I don't cover Penn State, but I follow Penn State because they're another team that's like considered the local team here in Pittsburgh. But man, he's going to be a bad dude for somebody.
Yeah.
And people who have had some Penn State wide receivers like Chris Godwin, you know what they like when they come in through when they're right. So like this could be a ridiculously good and ridiculously deep wide receiver class,
That's
and
what it is.
we got a
Yep.
glimpse of them. Yeah. But
That's what it
there's
is. It's deep, man. It's really
mhm.
deep. That's something to get excited about. If you're a team that needs a wide receiver, and what team really doesn't need at least one wide receiver, you can get one in this draft.
It's you certainly can. You can wait. You can wait a whiles too because I think that there's going to be. I mean, and also there were guys that didn't do this. Jamison Williams. We're still waiting to see like what will be his situation. How will he come back healthy this year? Drake London.
Yeah,
ESPN still has Drake London as the top receiver of this class. And that's a 6'5" receiver for USC who was making big plays. What's going to happen with him?
right.
And it's. I'm very intrigued to see where this class goes, and how these guys rise and fall. But there's another class that's not getting a lot of love, and we want to talk about what that class is. It's the running back position, and there's some really talented guys out there that just aren't getting any love because people don't value running backs anymore. We'll talk about that and other things you can look out for in the scouting combine in just a bit. But first, we're going to talk to you guys about Built Bar. It's the time of the year where people start giving up on their New Year's resolutions, Q, but not us. We got Built Bar to help us eat right and still enjoy eating right because Built Bars taste oh so good. If you haven't tried the new Puffs flavors of Built Bars, you're missing out because they're the best tasting Built Bars around. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallows. They're fluffy, marshmallowy, and they're not just a protein bar, they're a treat. They're covered in 100% real chocolate, and puffed flavors can come in cinnamon churro flavor, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie, and so many great flavors. All Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate, and they're low in calorie but high in protein. The Built Bars will only give you 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, but they will pack 17 grams of protein. Compare that to the average candy bar that has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. It's an easy decision what's better for you while still tasting great. You can check out all the different Built Bar flavors. They have coconut, almond, peanut butter, brownie, double chocolate, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, all those flavors available and more that are being released every month if you go to built.com right now. So go to built.com right now and be sure to use the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15, LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your next order of Built Bars at built.com. Back here in the Locked On NFL podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's your boy Q. Q, let's talk about the running back class. Now, they're coming in here, but we've heard a lot of hype on the wide receivers this year, a lot of hype on the quarterbacks, even though this is a bad, quote unquote, bad quarterback class. They're talking about that. Everyone's excited about the offensive tackles this year, the guards and the centers, the defensive line. Everybody's getting hype except the running backs. And this is a year that it's not like there's not any talented guys in here. Kenneth Walker was a guy who was in position to be a Heisman favorite until like the last couple games of the season. Isaiah Spiller has, NFL family ties. He Texas A&M. He was a big player. Kyren Williams was really strong for Notre Dame. You have another Alabama back in Brian Robinson Jr. You have talented dudes in this class. But it seems like the narrative that running backs don't matter to NFL teams is winning out because nobody's talking about this running back class.
Yeah, I know, man, and that's what I hate. I really do. I love to watch a really good running back cook. I mean, the days of watching a guy be a single back workhorse, that's really kind of gone, and I hate that, man. And I mean, you're covering the Pittsburgh Steelers. You
Mhm.
remember the days of the bus. You remember Le'Veon Bell when he was right. I mean, you remember all those great running backs. I, of
Mhm.
course, covering the Raiders. I remember Marcus Allen. I remember Bo Jackson. Hell, Josh Jacobs is a really good running back. Probably a guy that a lot of people are looking at now saying, why in the hell would you draft him in the first round? I just hate that for the running backs, man, because they're so good and they're so
Yep.
valuable to a team. But because of the wear and tear on their body, you see what the NFL does to them and these teams do to them. Man, I hate this. And that's why I never really get mad at players when they want to hold out for a better contract, because these teams will literally run them to the ground. They
Yep.
will give them carry after carry after carry after carry, and they'll earn every penny that they make, and then they'll earn an extended contract. And then when it's time to give them that contract, most teams will say, thanks, but no thanks. And then they'll move on and get someone else that's a cheaper version of that person, and just move on. I hate that for the running back position. I always tell people, hey, man, if you're raising your kids right now, don't raise them to be running backs. Not that I don't like running backs. They just don't get the longevity and they don't get the respect as other positions in the league.
No, I agree. It's part of the problem that I see right now. And like I see a lot of people say, "Oh, they don't matter." I don't think that they don't matter. I think that
They
there's been
definitely
teams.
matter.
Yeah, they
Right,
definitely matter. I mean, and I think the biggest thing is there's just teams that that it's hard to get a very talented running back and keep them long term and then have your shot, because here's the thing is that oftentimes there's very few superstar running backs. There's good running backs, but there's very few superstar running backs, and oftentimes when a team gets them, their window to win with them is so small. And
right,
I think that's the point that people have, is that like why spend a first round pick on a running back that might last you 5 years when you could spend that first round pick on an offensive tackle who might last you 8 to 10. And
right.
I get that logic, and football's a business,
It
but
is business.
but I do think there's also a point where you got to realize, and the Steelers realized this with Najee Harris. If you can get a guy who is the best of his class, a guy who can define the position, the way that Derrick Henry has for the Tennessee Titans, put him on your roster, make him a major part of your offense, and he can make so many things easier for you and your quarterback and the rest of your team, because he's grinding things out. I mean, I still say, if the Seahawks just give Marshawn Lynch the football, that man
Right,
has 2 Super Bowl rings. They got Super Bowl rings, but
right,
instead they opted to pass. They tried to get cute and they got intercepted.
right.
I think there's plenty of teams that that could have done better if they had trusted their running back in certain situations, or if things worked out just a little bit differently. But point being, Q, this is a running back class that I think that people shouldn't sleep on, as
No.
far as if you need a talented back or if you need a complimentary back, this is a year to get it and not spend a whole lot to do it, because I don't see a running back going in round one, and I think it might take a couple. I mean, it might take a couple picks, or more than a couple picks, maybe if like 10 or 12 picks before one goes in round two.
Yeah, I agree. I do. And this is a deep, deep class when it comes to running backs. And so I think there's going to be a lot of running backs taken on day 2 and on day 3, so you're going to get a guy in round 4 that's probably a round 2 talent. I mean, it's just straight up. And I love Najee Harris. I think that's a great pickup by the Steelers, but it's probably one of the last running backs that's going to go in the first round for a while. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just unfortunate. But man, I'll tell you, as far as the business part of it goes, there's going to be a lot of talent spread across the league in the running back position. I'm excited about Kenneth Walker. I want to see where he ends up going.
Hmm.
I don't think there's a team in the league that couldn't use him. I mean, if nothing else, as a complimentary back. Because right now, I mean, take Pittsburgh, for example. How many carries and how many touches does Najee Harris have? You
Too
know what I
many.
mean? Exactly. So if you can get a guy you don't even have to split some carries, just take a few off his hands throughout the course of a game, you're going to free him up and keep him a little bit fresh longer. And he might be that difference maker towards the end of the season or even in the playoffs. And so that's one element to it. But I think that the way that all these offenses are operating as well is there's multiple backs. There's two-headed monsters. Some teams have three-headed monsters. I mean, it's just you get one running back, you let him run the ball, cook for a while, 6, 7 carries, and boom, you got another guy in there. 6, 7 carries, another guy, 6, 7 carries. Just keep them fresh, keep them going, and that's how these teams are operating these days. So the running back position is just not treated the same way as it used to be. I think it's unfortunate, but I know one thing: for the draft coming up, that means there's going to be a ton of talent sprinkled throughout the whole course of the NFL draft over the course of the 3 days.
No, yeah, I'm right with you that there's going to be some interesting talent, and what we crazy is like these will be guys that might have been really first round guys who people will say, "Oh, see, they got him in the third round. You don't need a
Right.
running back. That guy was a third round." Like, no, that guy should have gone first. Like Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry went in the second round because
Right.
that was also a ridiculous year of running backs to pick. But two, people undervalue that guy. If you think that there were some of those teams in the first round, they knew that he was going to be Derrick Henry, that they would have
Right.
passed on him. I mean, imagine with him. So, like, imagine if the Patriots had gotten Derrick Henry and what he could have done for Tom Brady's final. Like, that would have been a nightmare. But
I'm
but
so angry about that Derrick Henry pick, man. You're bringing up memories that I don't like to share. I'm
I
angry
mean,
about
what
that.
happened? What happened?
The Raiders selected one pick before Derrick Henry, Jihad Ward.
I don't even know who that is.
Exactly.
Dang.
Jihad Ward. And I was pounding, they needed a running back. I was pounding the table for Derrick Henry. Get Derrick Henry. Get Derrick Henry. Roll Tide. Everything I could say to try to motivate them to get Derrick Henry. And they went with Jihad freaking Ward. And I think that he's, still hovering around the league a little bit. He might be in Indy. I know he was with the Giants for a quick minute, but the point is, maybe he's in Baltimore now. I don't know. But I mean, that lets you know right now that he's not made a big impact anywhere. And Derrick Henry is, well, like you mentioned, Derrick Henry. So there you go.
Right. But again, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out, who does make a difference when it comes to the running back position and where they land. But Q, before we go, I got to ask you, what are other players or groups that you're really excited to see in the combine over the next couple of days?
The only ones that matter, Chris. The only ones that matter. DBs. DBs
That's the
win
bottom line here.
games.
Every year.
I don't know why you even asked me a dumb question like that. The only position that matters is DBs because DBs win games. Sauce Gardner, let's go. That's
Man,
my guy. He's going to be
you're
gone
excited.
early.
I see you.
Yeah, he's going to be gone early, but that's my guy.
Okay, I feel you. This is going to be an interesting year for cornerbacks for me because Derek Stingley is a guy that when LSU won the title with Joe Burrow. I mean, we're talking not to 2 years ago.
Yep.
Everyone was like, "Yeah, that guy's going to be the first cornerback off."
He's a
Yeah,
true
as a freshman. Like people were like, "Yeah, he's going to be gone." Then you got Andrew Booth Jr. and Ahmad Gardner, and then there's still guys like Trent McDuffie and Roger McCreary, who everyone's like, "Yeah, those guys are first round graded corners too." Where do they fall? And this is what I said this on the Locked On Steelers podcast about wide receivers. All those 40 times, that's going to jump all these guys up into the earlier part of the first round. That's going to change the trajectory of how we see certain players fitting in different spots. The same thing goes for cornerbacks and safeties. If say Roger McCreary runs a 4.3 something,
right?
Everyone's gonna be like, well, put him up at the top of the list, or they're gonna do that with him. Say Ahmad Gardner runs a 4.2, say he runs a 4.5, people are gonna be like, oh well, people are gonna say, well, maybe he should jump back. It's gonna cause all these debates that we'll talk about for 2 months before the NFL draft. It's going to be insane, but this is part of why the combine is fun.
Yep. There's less than 60 days away, just so you know, from the first round of the draft. It's like 56 officially, something like that. 56 or 55. It's going to be here before you know it. I'm excited. And oh, by the way, it's literally going to be here before you know it. It will be in Las Vegas. So
there you go. So you'll get us all the exclusives, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
All right. So when Sauce Gardner goes to the Steelers at 20, you going
be there at 20. No way he's gonna be there. Sauce ain't gonna make it out the top 10, brother.
Nah, yeah, he's gonna be long gone.
Yep.
But anyways, point being, it's an exciting time. I'm sure we'll have a lot more to break down on this channel about the NFL scouting combine. Bo Brack will be back here on Monday to talk about all the results. Q and I just had to hit y'all with all our knowledge on the quarterbacks and wide receivers that we saw and how it's going to play out as we see things going on. We'll be back next week to break down more of what we saw here and how free agency is setting up, because that's also around the corner.
Yeah, buddy.
Don't lose sight of that. If you're watching this, I think it's 11 days from this. So this is coming out on the 4th of March. So in 11 days, free agency is going to start back up, and it's going to be crazy because this is the most money the NFL has ever had to spend on free agents. It's going to set new dynamics, new spending terms, how people are going to, how do people pay for certain positions? All that's going to start getting defined. It's going to create some interesting conversations. We'll be talking about that next week when we're back on the Friday edition. Q, it's always fun to do the show with you, man. Pleasure to do the Friday show, set people into the weekend with some great conversation with you, man. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
You can find everything I do on Twitter, man, at your boy Q254. Again, at your boy Q254. Locked On Bets, Locked On Raiders, Locked On NFL. It's all right there. It's like a GPS, man. At your boy Q254. What about you, Chris?
I'm at Carter Critiques on Twitter and Instagram. Do follow me. Check out all my work. I cover the Pittsburgh Steelers, Pitt football, Pitt basketball. I talk NFL draft. There's all sorts of things that I'm always doing. And of course, I host the Locked On Steelers podcast, just like you host the Locked On Raiders podcast, where we're breaking down your team Monday through Friday, just like we're breaking down the NFL Monday through Friday right here, free and available on all podcasting platforms, but especially Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and of course, YouTube. Like this video if you saw it on YouTube. Subscribe to the Locked On NFL channel and all of our channels to get all of our great content. From Chris Carter and Q, have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of the combine. This show will be back here on Monday with more great content on the Locked On NFL podcast.